Hi, it's me, Mondo. You may have seen some of my old tangent videos, or not. I used to have a really bad habit of staying up until like 2 in the morning talking about technology because I didn't have an outlet to really talk about it, and this was a super fun way to do that. It's been a long time, and I wanted to do it again, so hello. This channel is now called SoulsBench. And the reason I wanted to call it SoulsBench is because I had this kind of idea to do gaming benchmarks for specifically from software games, the Dark Souls series, Elden Ring, Sekiro, all that kind of stuff, because those are my favorite games of all time. And I had some inspiration from stuff like Budget Builds and Official. That's like one of my favorite YouTube channels, and all sorts of budget gaming and tech channels on YouTube. But I have frankly been bad with motivation, and I've also lost some footage, so I figured I would just get on here off the cuff and talk about kind of this channel a little bit and this concept, and just say hi. Forgive me if I look a little off to the side. I have the camera viewfinder here. Also, this whole thing was just a great excuse to try continuity camera with my Mac here. This is like a really good image for my phone. So in any case, let's get into it. So, SoulsBench was an idea for kind of a series to, like I said, benchmark the Dark Souls series. And my first idea for this whole series was this computer right here. This is a 1,1 MacBook Air. You know, the one that Steve Jobs pulled out of the envelope on stage. And I love this computer. I adore this computer. It is a piece of junk, but it's got quirky stuff like the slanted charge port here and the little one USB port and display out flap. I find this design hilarious and impractical, and as you might have seen just there, this hinge is super floppy and sad, and it likes to close on me. But I love this computer. It's a piece of junk. It's a 32-bit only system. So I thought it'd be really interesting to put a 32-bit version of Windows on here and get Dark Souls playing on it. I knew this wouldn't go very far. This is a Core 2 Duo that is underpowered and this, with like terrible cooling. And like I said, 32-bit only. So I was stuck on Windows 7 Home 32-bit is what I had installed. And this was back in like maybe 2022 or 2023, where it was just first coming out that Steam was going to stop working on Windows 7, and I think it still does kind of work on Windows 7, but it was kind of an experience to get the whole system going and to get Steam going on this system. Unfortunately, it's no longer running on here, so I actually have, I love these computers so much, I actually have 2 of them. And this one right here is working, I'll show you that in a second, is working with the original SSD that it came from Apple. So these computers had 2 configurations. You could get, I believe it was an 80 gigabyte mechanical hard drive that was almost exactly identical to the hard drive that you would get in your iPod, like your iPod Classic at the time, or you could get a 60 gigabyte solid state drive from Samsung. That's what this computer has. The other computer that I had, which was the main one that I was using, that I had Windows 7 32-bit set up on in a dual boot with macOS 10.7.5 Lion, I believe it is, or is it Mountain Lion? Now I have to check this out of curiosity. I think it's Lion. Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. So I'm going to say Lion. I had a dual booting, and that I went to look for the footage for that whole experience where I recorded the actual game playing itself. I did eventually get it running. Steam was a little sketchy to get going, but I did get it running, and I couldn't find that footage. And so I thought, okay, I'll boot the computer up and I'll get it going again. And that computer no longer booted up because that computer did come with the original mechanical hard drive at one time, and I had upgraded it to an aftermarket SSD to one I had found on Amazon. And if you don't know anything about these MacBook Airs, which most people don't, like I said, it was, with that mechanical hard drive, it was the same almost as what you would get in an iPod. And it's like, what do you mean by that? What I mean by that is the standard to plug the drive into the computer is essentially IDE, and these are 1.8 inch like ZIF hard drives. So it's literally like a flat cable that plugs into the drive. In any case, they're special, bespoke little drives, and these cheap Chinese knockoffs of the SSDs fail at a tremendous rate. Mine failed in that computer, so that computer doesn't, that drive is completely busted. and that I'm not getting that Windows 7 installation back. And I figured I would not go through all of the effort of getting Windows 7 going on this computer because I don't want to break this SSD. It's in good condition, from what I can tell. The drive is about as good condition as it can be for it being almost, is it 17 years old? Yeah, this this computer can almost be considered a legal adult. So I really don't want to put any more strain on the stock SSD than I have to. So I did not go ahead and put 7 back on here and do the whole shenanigans of getting Dark Souls running. But it was quite the adventure when I did it. Like I said, Windows 7 Home 32-bit edition, I did get Steam going on it. The computer was incredibly slow. These computers only have 2 gigabytes of RAM, and it's not very fast. And like I said, it's like a Core 2 Duo, and it's not very fast because it's underpowered and the cooling is terrible. So it took a very, very long time to get things going. Also, these are kind of earlier computers in the Intel transition for Apple, so they don't love doing things like USB boot for the bootable environment to install your operating system. So you cannot make a 10.7 USB install disk very easily. It is possible, but it was so tremendously difficult for me that I opted to make a DVD to burn 10.7 to a DVD to get this computer set up the way I had wanted it to at that time, just to get Mac OS on it. And then I had to burn Windows 7 32-bit to a DVD with the Boot Camp Assistant because Boot Camp Assistant didn't support making a USB bootable drive either. So finally, stock Mac OS 10.7 with Boot Camp set up, and then I did as many updates as I could in Windows 7 to get it to play nice with Steam. That was already losing support for Windows 7, especially 32-bit, because of newer Chrome backend stuff in the Steam launcher. Once I got it running, it was so tremendously slow, especially with the new library, newer library interface, where it shows like all the full art for every game and stuff like that. I had to make it go into like the mini library selection, where basically it would go straight to the library. It wouldn't render or wouldn't start at the store menu, and it would just show the little text games list. So I wasn't even getting like much of a graphical interface for getting into games. And with that menu, I was able to download Dark Souls. Funnily enough, this was when it must have been 2023 then. This was when they first added the local network download on Steam, and that feature actually worked. I downloaded Dark Souls on this Mac or the other Mac through the network from my main PC at the time. I thought that was really cool that actually worked. I got it running, and of course I installed DSFix. DSFix, if you don't know, is a really popular essentially INI file changer, or like it automatically goes in and changes graphics configurations in Dark Souls Prepare to Die edition, the original release of Dark Souls from 2011 or I think 2012 on PC. And that was, DSFix has been around since the game came out. I think it came out like within the week of the game coming out because the game has some weird limitations with, like, you can't change the resolution. The internal resolution of Dark Souls runs somewhere in the range of 720p on that original release, and it is not able to be changed. You can change your output resolution, but to scale to the size of your monitor, but the internal rendering resolution is like stuck. So weird quirks like that, the DSFix fixes. So I loaded DSFix and all that kind of stuff, and I cranked the resolution way down, turned off all the effects, turned off all the anti-aliasing and the ambient occlusion and all that stuff, and the game ran so poorly. Like, poorly in a way that I have never, ever seen on any other machine that I've ever tried Dark Souls on. Again, 32-bit system, 2 gigabytes of RAM, super difficult to even get going on Windows 7, let alone anything newer. This won't work on Linux for playing Dark Souls, because if I wanted to do that, I would have to use Proton, and this from 2008 does not have Vulkan support, and that's the only way to use Proton. So I went through all of this work, this tremendous amount of work with all this legacy software and DVDs and all this stuff, just to see Dark Souls running, looking horrendous at like less than 10 frames a second. I think at native resolution on this display, which was like, which I think is 1366 by 768 or something like that, it was running at like 3 frames a second. It was horrendous. Like, and the input lag. The input lag was like something I have never experienced on any other device playing Dark Souls. Specifically, so Windows 7, unlike Windows 10, does not have built-in support for Xbox controllers. Xbox One controllers and 360 controllers are natively supported in 10. There's just a built-in driver for them. 7 does not. If you want a 360 controller to work, you have to go and install a driver, and I don't even know what the process is for Xbox One controllers. So I was using Steam input to get controllers to work on Dark Souls 1. and like so I was using Steam's backend for controllers, and something about that made the input lag horrendous. And even then, I think even trying with the keyboard, it was not much better. So it was by far and away the worst experience playing Dark Souls on any device I've ever played. And I really just walked around the asylum for 2 seconds and just saw how bad it was. And I think I took a video of hitting the roll button, like hitting B and like waiting, and then seeing the character roll really slowly and kind of stand up, finish the animation, and like hitting B to backstep, and it would like, like it would take a second and then back up. So terrible experience for all this work. And unfortunately, I lost the footage, and like I don't know, it was on a hard drive somewhere, and I think I just lost it, or maybe I didn't save it in a proper place, and I reset my computer when I didn't know that file was on there, gone. And yeah, like I said, can't reproduce it because the drive is busted. So that was my first kind of foray into the whole SoulsBench idea, and it didn't go very well. And of course, and if you don't know, I kind of know the general performance characteristics of the Souls games. Dark Souls 1 Prepare to Die Edition is the easiest to run of the Souls series by far. That game generally runs on pretty low-end hardware. And if that game was running so horrifically that nothing else would work, or that the game itself does not work to play, nothing else is going to work. I did actually, out of morbid curiosity, I think load the original DirectX 9 release of Dark Souls 2, so not Scholar of the First Sin, and it was just as bad, or I think it was worse actually. So I think I booted that one up for like 2 seconds, and it was just out of morbid curiosity, and it was just not happening. So that was SoulsBench's first kind of attempt. Beyond that, I was going to, even before that, before the SoulsBench idea, I was going to do a general benchmark on a completely different computer. Oh wait, actually, before I get into that, I want to show you, because I have this Mac here and on. First of all, say hi. This is you in the photo booth here. Something I wanted to show you when I was just turning this computer on, just because to demonstrate how tremendously slow this computer is. So this is Photo Booth. And if you don't know this about Photo Booth, the old Photo Booth has a mode that is full screen that has this like theater view, right? I'm going to switch to that theater view right now. I'm going to press Enter Full Screen and watch how long it takes and then how slow Photo Booth becomes. Check this out. All right, so I just clicked Enter Full Screen. It's doing it right now. So it's like getting in the mode. There it goes. The laggiest animation you've ever seen. And then now the viewfinder has actually become unresponsive. I am physically moving the computer and the viewfinder is not being nice. And then if I go to the top bar here, all these options become like so sluggish to select. And then if I say exit full screen, it takes just as long. And then once it's back, it's like, oh hey, look at that. It actually responds to my inputs. So I just thought that was really funny. That randomly I opened Photo Booth and it was like, oh, this is a perfect demonstration of how tremendously slow this computer is, even in Mac OS, which is undoubtedly more optimized and runs better than Windows 7 does. And Windows 7 is a light operating system, but compared to a lot of modern stuff, Windows 10, Windows 11. But it was so bad on this computer. It was really slow. So I won't be doing that again. I'm gonna leave this computer alone. I'm gonna let it survive for as long as it's gonna survive. I'm gonna shut this down here. Anyway, so as I was saying, I had an idea to benchmark another system. This was a system that I had been using, or that had been kind of in my life for a while. Like it was a friend's computer, and I'd done some major changes to it, and then he'd upgraded his computer, so I took it and we had like cut up the case to upgrade the video card and stuff, and then I went random. I found a different chassis for it and like put it in its correct chassis again, that without all the cuts and stuff in it. It was this whole adventure I'd gone on with this computer, and really it wasn't anything special. I think it was an Optiplex, or no, it was an HP Pavilion desktop that was similar to like a small form factor Optiplex. i5 third generation. I think it was a 3330, or no, it might have been a 3470. I'm not sure. Or 3415. I don't remember. A third generation i5 processor with varying amounts of memory in it, and a very some kind of low profile video card, either a GT710, or I think I had a Radeon in it. More recently, I had like one of the R5 Radeons that Budget Builds has talked about, of like these refreshed AMD cards that had like 6 or 7 refreshes and ended up as these like small form factor cards that were basically laptop chips. Super strange. But I had that computer running in all sorts of configurations, and I had been ready to do a bunch of benchmarks on this computer, including with the whole Souls series, and I just never got around to it. I think I even had the games loaded on there, and I never got around to it. But the TLDR on that system is, it probably would have run most of the Souls series pretty exceptionally. Especially, I think like Demon Souls Third Elimination would have been fine. Dark Souls original release would have been fine. Dark Souls Remastered would have even been fine at 60 frames a second. Both releases of Dark Souls 2 would have been fine. Dark Souls 3 probably would have had some hitching in certain areas, but would have been broadly a very playable experience. And I think where it would have fallen apart was probably Sekiro or Elden Ring, where you would have probably had to bring the settings way down to maintain a stable frame rate. That's my guess on that system. It had varying amounts of, like I said, varying amounts of memory, varying video cards, so varying performance characteristics at any point in its life. And what really never materialized with that computer was me having any real use for it. So I never got around to filming anything with it, and I really never got around to using it for much of anything. So at this point, it's now been given to a friend who's using it as a server, and that's it's found a better home, to be honest, than with me. So, you know, another kind of attempt at this SoulsBench idea that never really materialized. So where do we go from here? I don't see myself as like any kind of YouTuber or anything. Like, I like making these videos like very occasionally, but you know, as you can see, the last time I made a video was it's been maybe 2 years. I haven't even checked. So I'll make a video when I feel like it. I have plenty of hardware still that I can use. I've gotten rid of a lot of old computers and stuff that I really wasn't using, that were just taking up space. But I have a lot of computers that I think it would still be interesting to do the SoulsBench idea on. This computer that I'm filming on is the new M4 Mac Mini, the base model, and this computer has a lot of fight in it for playing the Souls games. And there have been plenty of benchmarks about, you know, playing like Elden Ring and stuff on here, but not, you know, the whole Souls gauntlet. So I think it'd be interesting to look at, and I could do that. Especially, I've seen a lot of stuff with software like Crossover, which is paid software, really, really effective for playing Windows games on the Mac, but it costs money, and I'd be curious to see how it, you know, the Souls series would run on something like Whiskey, which is free, but works not as well. I have briefly tried Dark Souls Remastered, Dark Souls 1, both releases of Dark Souls 1 on the system, and just kind of quirky behavior that I saw. Weirdly, Dark Souls Remastered ran better than Prepare to Die Edition. Remastered worked just fine. It's locked 60 frames a second, which is very important for Remastered. If you don't know, Remastered has a limitation where if you're not running at 60 frames a second, if you're running below the 60 frames a second that it's capped at, the game runs at a reduced speed. It's just from the constraints of the development of that game. So you need to be maintaining 60 frames a second, not just for a playable experience like frame rate wise, but actually like for the speed of the game. And that was running at a consistent 60 frames a second, where I could not get the original release of Dark Souls 1, Prepare to Die Edition, to run at any more than like 10 or 15 frames a second. From my understanding, that's likely a behavior that comes from Whiskey's usage of an old version of Wine for Mac that has better DirectX 11 support than it does DirectX 9 support, and I just thought that was an interesting behavior. I could pursue that further, like I said, with both releases of Dark Souls 2. Also, we'd see some pretty unique behavior on this computer where the only version of any Souls game that you could say would run like natively on this system would actually be the original PS3 release of Demon Souls, because RPCS3 has a Mac build for Apple Silicon Macs. So I would imagine that would be the most performant and easiest to get going of all of the Souls series, but it would take a tremendous amount of work for me to, you know, set that up and get every game downloaded. And so if SoulsBench is, you know, this kind of leads into where like the frequency of SoulsBench videos, it will probably be none until a certain point where I decide to like get a workflow going of like installing all these games to an external drive and kind of setting up all the software in advance, and then I can go like computer by computer and do a bunch of these all at once kind of thing. So if I ever come back to this idea of the SoulsBench series, it will be a series, likely a finite series of just the computers that I own, of like 4 or 5 videos, probably closer to each other than not. So it could be that like a year from now I get inspired and then I just do them all back to back, or something like that. No promises, because I do this for fun when I feel like it. So that's been SoulsBench. This I would call the SoulsBench like pilot. Years in the making of just fiddling with hardware and having some good behavior and losing footage, like I said. And then I think the other thing I want to do with this channel, again, when I feel like it, is kind of going back to the old tangent style of videos when I feel like it. Not at 2 in the morning, maybe, and a little bit more focused on what I would want to call a series called From a Technician's Perspective, or something like that, a technician's perspective, where I see a lot of stuff online about technology from kind of general users, from content creators, from gamers, from people who have a light interest in the hardware, but I see almost nothing in talking about newer technology and stuff like that from a technician's perspective. I'm a repair technician, but not about the repair. So there's a lot of great stuff from people like Louis Rossmann and from like iFixit and stuff like that about the repairability of various devices and stuff like that. But I don't always want to talk about the repairability of a device. I want to talk about like performance characteristics and the nuances of what like a particular device is doing, or what the software is, and just anything that comes to mind, anything that falls within my interests. But viewing it from the lens of I'm a technician and I have a certain take on things that is a little bit different from the average user, or a certain way of viewing things that is more nuanced, because sometimes I get hands-on with this tech every single day in a way that other people cannot, and we're like, these aren't my devices, but I'm still hands-on with them, repairing them or troubleshooting software issues, all that kind of stuff. And so likely it will be news-driven. Like it will be like, if I see something in the news that really catches me and I really want to talk about it, I'll come on here and make something maybe a little less nice looking than this. Maybe with just like a webcam and a headset mic, just talking about it, and gameplay footage or not, I think that'll be fun. So that's from a technician's perspective is kind of the idea for the naming of that series per se. But don't expect much of anything aside from this. So I hope you enjoyed this, and leave a comment. Tell me what you think about benchmarking the Soul series, if that's something you care to see. If anyone is watching. All right, have a good one.